When people hear the word revelation, they might imagine thunder, lightning, tablets, and commandments, and a single overwhelming moment at Sinai. But Jewish sources are much more complicated and much more interesting than this simple view.
The Sinai experience is one that is also seen as being supernatural. It's not just God speaking, but it comes with all sorts of other stuff. We have this custom, which is from the 16th century, from Rav Yosef Karo, to stay up all night of Shavuot and study Torah is done here beautifully. And the question is, where does that custom come from? And there are those who say that it comes from a midrash because the Jews slept late on the morning of the giving of the Torah. So to ensure that we wouldn't sleep late, we stay up all night, which I guess precludes the idea of sleeping late.
Do you think it was to help soften us up so that you're slightly delusional when you see these things on the mountain? They're a little more impressive. Was that the
I don't know. I'm not sure. That's a good question.
We are looking at here Exodus chapter 19, starting at verse 16. And the scene that's being set here is very much one of something that is beyond this plane of existence. You're seeing as the dawn is breaking, there was thunder and lightning and a dense cloud and loud blasts. And I think growing up, I grew up in New Orleans, and I'm thinking of that sort of right before the hurricane as things start moving around and you have this transition from one to the next. Or if you've ever had the pleasure of going through the eye of the storm, as I did as a child, you walk out in the middle and it's beautiful sunshine right up to the sky, and a mile away you can see things traveling. And that's just at least for me how I imagine this, that you're watching these tornadoes and moving debris and this whole mountain shaking, and there you are in the eye of it, about 10 count or something profound. All the people witnessed the thunder and the lightning, the blare of the horn and the mountain smoking. When the people saw it, they fell back and stood at a distance. And the question that Rashi raises in his commentary on it is, what does it mean by all the people saw?
Rashi says they saw that which should be heard, something which is impossible to see on any other occasion. And to me, what's important about that and what's relevant about that is that second phrase there. It's not something that is possible at any other time. This is a sui generis, unique experience, something that is completely different than anything else. And part of what's interesting about it on other layers and levels as well is that we don't have great descriptions. This is not the only prophetic event in the Torah. There's many a prophetic event in the Torah. This is the only sort of public event of a prophecy in the Torah. Now, God talks about speaking to Moshe person to person. Other prophets see dreams or they're put to sleep. It's not a natural process. Here, the Jewish people are akin to Moshe. They're awake, maybe barely awake, but they're awake. But the process is what occurs is something that is completely different than anything else of any other time period. That's the way it is described. And that's part of, at least to me, what's interesting is Rashi is picking up on seeing what is usually heard. And we know the phrase, seeing is believing. So maybe part of that is you heard it, but it's more than just hearing it. The experience is greater than just the experience of hearing alone, the multi-sensory experience.
Are you familiar with synesthesia?
No, I don't know that phrase.
So synesthesia is where you actually see colors when you hear sounds. And there's a sort of a high convergence of people who have perfect pitch, and then this extra, actually, optical nerve stimulation that's occurring when they hear sounds. So they'll hear a C and say, oh, that's a blue. And they'll hear an A and say, oh, that's a green or a red. And it's not a conserved color palette, but they actually experience sound in color form. And if my memory is correct, they were able to simulate this in people using magnetic stimulation. So you put a magnet on the brain and kind of flick it from the side, give it a little jostle. And you could actually invoke something like this, where a sound was now corresponding to a color. And part of what's going on in your brain when this is happening is that the wires are crossed. Literally, the neurons are sending signals across these different neuronal pathways so that you're hearing sound. And for me, that's what I was imagining, in addition to the cacophony here, is almost this, it's so intense that it's overwhelming your normal brain chemistry to where you are experiencing it with all of your senses in a way.
When you come back to my house and you're at my Shabbat table and I'll be trying to sing some Zmirot and my kids will be saying how terrible I sound, you'll understand as to why that phrase, I will not even remember the word to make myself feel better. But the Jewish people are terrified. They're overwhelmed. The experience is beyond what people could recognize. And it's a very intriguing scientific point that you point out. And they move backwards. They move away, right? The Rashi here cites a midrash of an exaggeration that they move back 12 miles, a very far amount. I would imagine the number 12 there is being used because of the 12 tribes of Israel and saying like everybody was part of it. That's why they're moving 12 miles. Everybody is moving back and they are trembling. They are scared, which is it's a very difficult process that they go through at this time, destabilizing, fearful. They're worried and they're scared.
In a chapter or two just before this, 3 chapters before this, God has just wiped out all of the Egyptians in the Sea of Reeds and has really proven to these people who he's pulled out of Egypt that he can do what he means, and says what he means and does it.
Right. The threat is only a good threat. Not that this is a threat, but a threat is only a good threat if you've carried it out in the past.
And there's this notion that the people were unfamiliar with God over those 400 years of slavery, that it had been beaten out of them. And so I think as well in this moment, as you have this sort of overwhelming spectacle, I'm intrigued by the fact that not only did they back up, but they also ask. And I realized the first part of the Exodus 20 is cut off in the source sheet here, so I'll amend that before this goes online. But they ask Moses to mediate. They say, well, this is too much. We will do, and then we will hear, which we'll come to in a moment. And then Moshe, you take over from here. And I do wonder if there's a missed opportunity there. To your point, almost all the prophecy is private, but this is a very public event. And did the people give up something when they introduced Moses as a mediator?
Yeah, it's an intriguing question on many levels. On one level, we know what happens when Moses is absent later on, the golden calf story. Well, they don't know what to do without Moshe. They say, Ki Moshe ish einenu yodea mehayalo, the man Moses, we do not know what happened to him, and try to bring in other intermediaries to talk to and to communicate with God with. The idea of then bringing, they're used to having order and structure dictated to them from the outside. We talked about the lack of God in Egypt and they don't know God's name. They've heard, they remember, there are some prophecies, there are some ideas that they're supposed to come out of Egypt, but that's so far forgotten. And what is the name of God and what does God represent and what does God say? And Moshe is really their be all and end all to all of this. And moving from the oppressive Egyptians to this structure, not that God is trying to oppress them, but the way it comes out may be a traumatic experience for these people. It's overwhelming and too much. And even if they are willing and want to do this, may be too much for them. Yeah, in terms of your question, I think here is less about the particulars of the information and more about the experience. And every religion has experiential aspects to it. You're supposed to go up to the temple 3 times a year. Once every 7 years, we have this ceremony, the Hakel, and everybody gathers there. And in the Talmud discussion says, I understand why the adults go. Why do the kids go? It's for the experience. It's not for them to hear the Torah.
One of the things we'll explore in a minute is about the coercive aspect of this, right? Was this a consensual revelation or was it forced upon the people? They didn't sign up. Rabbi Avini Bar Chasa said the Jewish people actually stood beneath the mountain. And the verse teaches that the Holy One, blessed be He, overturned the mountain above the Jews like a tub and said to them, if you accept the Torah, excellent. And if not, there will be your burial.
The Maharal actually compares this piece of Talmud, he understands it through that way, that God, as it were, raped the Jewish people and then is forced to marry them. So this is a story from the Talmud. It's known as the Tanur Shel Achnai, the oven of Achnai. It's a story where the rabbis have a debate about whether or not an oven can be made ritually pure without the details therein. And the rabbis all have one opinion, and Rabbi Eliezer has a different opinion. Generally, the way Jewish law works is there are two different questions. You could say the question of who is more accurate versus what does the majority say. Here, the majority said one thing. Rabbi Eliezer said the other. He's not able to prove to them logically that he is correct, and the majority is against him. So they rule the day rather than him. And then Rabbi Eliezer starts to perform all sorts of miracles. He gets a carob tree, is uprooted and runs 100 cubits or 400 cubits. And the rabbis say, I don't care about a carob tree. That doesn't matter to me. And he said, if the law is like me, then the water will run in the opposite direction instead of going north to south, other than the Nile, right? It's going to go south to north. It's going to move away from flowing towards the sea, and the water does that. It flows in the opposite direction. And the rabbis say, Jewish laws is not given to the streams. I don't care about the streams. And he says, if the law is like me, the walls of the study hall will start to cave in. They start to cave in, and then they stop and don't cave in too much, out of respect to Rabbi Eliezer because he asked them, but also out of respect to the other rabbis who seemingly for the walls to cave in on them. And I don't think he meant to cave on them completely. That wouldn't work. And they said, we don't care about the walls. And finally, he says to them, and this is on page 10 and number 4, if the halacha is in accordance with my opinion, heaven will prove it. A divine voice emerged from heaven and said, why are you differing with Rabbi Eliezer, as the halacha is in accordance with his opinion in every place that he expresses an opinion? That's what the voice from heaven comes out and tells them, like Rabbi Yosef Karo's Maggid, Rabbi Yosef Karo's other supernatural sort of being. And what happens is, number 5, Rabbi Yeshua stands on his feet. He's posturing and he's standing up and he's being strong. And I can't tell you if Rabbi Yeshua was tall.
It's supposed to be a hunchback, I think.
So, okay. So he's standing up on his feet. Thank you. I appreciate it. And he says, Lo bashamayim. The Torah is not in the heavens. What is it? Why is it telling us Lo bashamayim, that the Torah is not in the heavens? And he cites an opinion of Rabbi Yirmiyah. Once the Torah was given at Sinai, we no longer listen to the divine voice. Once the Torah was given at Sinai, we no longer listen to the divine voice. It was given to us. It was given to us. And the rule is the majority rules the day. The majority of rabbis believe X. Your opinion is Y. We do not care if God says you're right, because it's not about, in a sense, who is right. It's about what we think, and we are the majority. And it's this lots of questions and lots of layers of this piece of Talmud. For us, part of what it's demonstrating is the movement from the Sinai destabilizing experience where the Jews are terrified and worried, and the Torah is given to them and forced upon them, to the ownership of it. It is now ours. We will determine what we believe is correct, what we believe and that's better, because we're the adults, we're the decision makers, we're not the children getting told what to do by God, or the sort of the childish answer of Na'aseh v'nishma, I trust you blindly. A smart adult doesn't really trust people blindly. Dying through the sanctification of the name of God is very difficult. But the real challenge is not dying al pi kiddush Hashem, but living al pi kiddush Hashem, that living every single day with these commandments and teachings, and not.
Mordecai Kaplan wrote these books in a very interesting time, which was the late 20s, early 30s in America. And it was following the final waves of Jewish emancipation in Europe, as well as, of course, in America, a time when Jews could finally choose to not be Jewish. There was enough legal protection, there was enough structure in place that two major, one incentive and one barrier were removed. And what he describes is Jews can choose not to be Jewish and still exist in society and not be murdered for it. And the second is, as their lives improved, the appeal of Olam Haba, which is very prominent throughout all medieval and early modern Judaism, starts to go away. If this life isn't so bad, you're not so eager to move on to the next one. And if this life's not so bad, you're not so eager to see your enemies punished and things like that. And so that's really one of the core things that he explores in the early sections of those works is Jews choosing to be Jewish despite the fact that they don't have to. And I was seeing that parallel here that I feel like oscillate in time between these two poles of Jews choosing to be Jewish and Jews being forced to be Jewish.